Hey, my friend, come, sit with me for a moment. I want to share something that's been weighing on my heart, something I think you might understand. I was reading a quote the other day by a writer named Rollo May, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. He said, "The opposite of courage in our society is not cowardice, it is conformity. And man, did that land." It's like it put words to a feeling I've carried for years, this quiet, humming vibration of wrongness deep in my gut. You know the one I'm talking about, don't you? It's that feeling you get when you've done everything you were ever told to do. You got the good grades, you landed the stable job, you built the perfect-looking life. From the outside, you're the picture of success, a fortress of responsibility. But then, in the dead of night, when the house is quiet and the only sound is your own breathing, a voice whispers from a place so deep you almost forgot it was there. It asks, "Is this it? Is this really you?" I'm here to tell you that this feeling, this divine discontent, isn't a sign that you've failed. It's the complete opposite. It's the first sacred tremor of your soul waking up. It's a message from your higher self, a loving nudge to peel back the layers of who you were told to be and finally, courageously, meet the person you were born to be. If you feel that tremor right now, even just a little, know you're in the right place. Let us all know you're hearing this call by typing a 777 in the comments below. Your journey is sacred, and believe me, you are not walking it alone. This whole thing, it starts so early, doesn't it? It's this gentle, almost invisible programming. I look back now, and I see it so clearly. I remember this kid. Maybe he was a friend, maybe he was me. It doesn't really matter. He was the system's dream come true. When other kids were running wild, he was praised for sitting still. When his mind was exploding with a million technicolor ideas, he was celebrated for coloring inside the lines of a black and white worksheet. I can still picture the teacher's approving smile, a smile that said, "This is how you earn love, by being contained." His parents, God bless them, they just wanted him to be happy and safe. They called him a blessing, a good boy, because he never argued, never challenged their reality, never looked them in the eye, and asked that terrifyingly simple question, why? Why do we do it this way? Why do I have to believe that? Why can't I be me? His neighbors saw a polite, agreeable boy. His report card screamed potential, but it was a potential for fitting in, not for standing out. He learned the currency of the world isn't authenticity, it's obedience. He became the gold standard, the quiet, focused, perfectly compliant child. And with every pat on the head, with every A on his report card, a piece of his wild, divine soul was gently put to sleep. He was taught to be good, to be nice, to be a predictable and manageable version of himself. And so, he began the long walk down a path that was paved for him with good intentions, a path lit by the expectations of others. And he never once thought to question who built the road or where it was really going. And you have to understand, this isn't some rare, unfortunate story. This is the cultural water we all swim in. It's a pervasive, unspoken agreement that values the smooth functioning of the collective over the unique, divine expression of the individual. I stumbled upon this study from the Pew Research Center a while back, from 2021, and it stopped me in my tracks. It found that 83% of parents in America would rather their child be obedient than creative. Just let that vibration settle in your bones for a second. That's not just a statistic about parenting. That is the foundational frequency of our entire society. It's a silent hum that teaches us from the moment we can understand words that our innate creativity, our wildness, our direct line to source energy is dangerous. It needs to be managed, tamed, and ultimately sacrificed for the sake of the pre-approved script. So, of course, when it came time for that boy to make the big life decisions, he didn't dare to consult the compass of his own heart. He didn't ask, what sets my soul on fire? What makes me feel like I'm touching the face of God? He asked the questions the system had programmed into him. What will look most impressive on my resume? Which path will make me seem the most responsible, the most stable? He chose safety. He chose logic. He got a degree in business or engineering, something practical. It wasn't a choice born from a deep, soul-shaking love for the subject. It was a choice born from the cold, hard calculus of the collective mind. And for this, the world applauded him. His parents were so proud. His friends patted him on the back for being so sensible. Society gave him a big collective thumbs up. He'd done it. He'd made the right choice. But no one, not even him, paused to ask the most important question. Was it his choice? He had followed the blueprint perfectly, completely unaware that it was a map leading him further and further away from his own sacred destiny. So he graduated, got the respectable job, and started climbing that ladder. You know the one. He became a perfect soldier in the army of conformity. He was the model of efficiency, never late for a meeting, always smiling that agreeable smile. He'd take on the extra hours without complaint, feeling the slow drain on his life force, but telling himself it was the price of success. In those sterile boardrooms, where a single spark of authentic creativity could have changed everything, he kept his head down and his mouth shut. He learned to be useful, humble, a predictable and well-oiled cog in the great machine. He did everything a good man is supposed to do. He bought the modest house in the suburbs, the one with the white picket fence. He married a good woman, someone who fit the picture. They had children, because that's what you do next. He paid every bill on time, a silent transaction where he traded his soul for security. And every year, he'd stand there for the family Christmas photo, putting on that same practiced smile, and post it on social media with a caption about how grateful he was. A perfect performance for an audience of people who were all performing the exact same play. He was the model adult, the dream employee for any HR department, predictable, efficient, utterly respectable. He never chased a single crazy dream that whispered to him in the dark. He never disappointed his parents. He never made a single wave in the placid, comfortable waters of society. He followed that unwritten script that so many of us are handed at birth. Study, work, marry, provide, retire, and then just quietly fade away. And the craziest part? He took a strange kind of pride in it all. A pride in never straying, never taking a risk, never getting lost. But the real tragedy, the one he couldn't see, was that he was never on his own path to begin with. He never stopped to ask where this road was even going, who had laid down these bricks, or if it was ever his road to walk at all. His days had the appearance of progress. His nights had the illusion of purpose. But in the deepest, most secret chamber of his heart, something was screaming that it was all wrong. It was a frequency he had learned to tune out, but now the whisper was growing louder. Is this really all there is? There's a name for this, my friend. Psychologists call it the default mode life. It's a life lived on autopilot, a life guided not by conscious, soul-aligned choices, but by old habits, deep programming, and the subtle, pervasive vibration of fear. It's always the path of least resistance, the comfortable road that promises safety but leads to an empty house. And listen to me now, this is important. This doesn't happen because you're weak or because you're stupid. It happens because the very system we are born into is designed to reward compliance far more than it rewards courage. The rules are unwritten but crystal clear. Be obedient, be responsible, be productive. Be what others expect you to be. He was never punished in a way you could see. No one ever told him no. No one ever had to beat him down. The control was so much more insidious. No one had to force him, because he had learned to force himself. He meticulously built the walls of his own prison, one dutiful brick at a time. He was the one who closed the doors, the one who turned the key, locking himself inside a version of success that had been handed to him by generations of people who had also locked themselves away. And from inside this gilded cage, he looked out at the world and called his servitude freedom. This quiet tragedy, my friend, is playing out in millions of lives, all around us, every single day. It's not that someone came and stole his freedom with a gun. It's that he was conditioned so perfectly, so gently, so thoroughly, that he completely forgot he was ever born with it. And if you're listening to me, and you feel that familiar ache in your chest knot, a loud panic, not a crushing sadness, but a quiet, persistent knowing that something just isn't right, then this story isn't just about some other guy. It's about you. It's about me. It's about us. So how the hell does this happen? How can a person live an entire life, a whole damn life, and never realize they weren't even at the wheel? Well, a French philosopher named Etienne de la Boétie figured it out almost 500 years ago. He said the most dangerous, most effective form of control isn't force, it's consent. He called it voluntary servitude. Think about that. It's not the tyrant on a throne who keeps you in line. It's the quiet voice inside your own head, the one that's been programmed since birth to whisper that obedience is a noble virtue and fitting in is a sacred duty. The most powerful tyrannies are the ones that never have to raise their voice because the people police themselves, and that's exactly what happened to him. He wasn't dragged into his servitude. He was raised in it. He was smiled into it. He was rewarded and praised into it. He was taught to be a good boy, a good student, a good employee, a good citizen. He never had to say yes to the system, because he never even knew that saying no was a possibility. La Boétie had a term for it: voluntary servitude. It's when we willingly accept our own chains because we've been masterfully conditioned to believe they are virtues. And let's be honest, there's no conditioning system on earth more effective than our schools. I saw this data from the OECD, and it just confirmed everything I'd been feeling. Over 70% of the tests and assessments our kids take are designed to measure one thing: how well they can comply and memorize. Only a tiny 8% are designed to encourage the divine spark of creativity or critical thinking. What does that tell you? It tells you that from the age of 5, we are systematically taught not how to think, but what to think. We are learning how to obey. He was rewarded for being quiet, for writing neatly, for asking only the questions that had easy, pre-approved answers. He became a master at playing the game, long before he had any clue it was a game at all. And the praise he received for following the rules became the very fabric of his identity. It's so much deeper than just shaping behavior, you see. The system shapes our very sense of self-worth. It rewires our morality. It becomes our definition of good. That's why he pushed himself so hard. It wasn't some external boss cracking a whip. It was his own internal script, that old software installed in his childhood, telling him that any deviation from the plan was a fundamental failure of his character. He became his own supervisor. He didn't need punishment from the outside, because the deep, primal fear of disappointing others was more powerful and more terrifying than any consequence anyone could ever threaten him with. This is what some psychologists call learned compliance. It's this insidious process where we internalize the rules of obedience so deeply that the line blurs. You can no longer tell the difference between your own authentic thoughts and the thoughts that were given to you by someone else. He thought he was being a disciplined man. In reality, he was just a deeply conditioned one. He thought he was being responsible. In reality, he was just terrified to step out of line. And this brings us to the most powerful and tragic mechanism of control, a phenomenon that another brilliant Frenchman, Gustave Le Bon, wrote about way back in 1895, the power of the crowd. Le Bon's insight was profound, and it's something most people still don't want to look at today. He said that when we are in groups, we literally lose our minds. We stop being sovereign, rational individuals, and we merge into a collective consciousness. The crowd, he said, doesn't reason. It reacts. It follows. It imitates. Our capacity for critical, individual thought just shuts down, and our primitive, instinctual brain, the part that just wants to belong and be safe, takes over. We stop thinking for ourselves, and we start repeating the slogans of the group, not because we're weak, but because we're human. We are wired with a deep, primal need to belong. He wasn't raised in some brutal dictatorship. It was much more subtle. He grew up surrounded by people who, just like him, had learned to confuse repetition with truth and conformity with morality. So what did he do? He copied them. It's what we all do. He looked at what they valued, what they praised on social media, what they applauded in public, and he mirrored it back to them perfectly. He did this not from a place of deep conviction, but from a place of deep fear, because it just felt safer than questioning it. You've heard of the bandwagon effect, right? We just assume something must be right if enough people are doing it. I saw a Gallup poll from 2020 that said 95% of Americans believe owning a home is the ultimate sign of stability. Yet, we know millions are drowning in debt to chase that dream. Why? Because everyone else is doing it, and doing something different feels reckless. It feels dangerous. He didn't want to be seen as unstable, or irresponsible, or God forbid weird. He didn't want to stand out in a world that is absolutely obsessed with fitting in. A world where being different is treated like a threat. And that's the secret, my friend. Society never had to punish him for thinking differently. It just had to make him terrified of being alone. And so, he became a living embodiment of what Le Bon warned about. A man who followed the crowd, not out of faith, but out of a deep-seated fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of being left behind. Fear of being the only one with his hand up when the rest of the room is silent. He learned to laugh at their jokes, to fear their enemies, to desire their treasures. He wasn't brainwashed in the classic sense. He was just perfectly well adjusted to a society that rewards anyone who never asks why. And if you're sitting there thinking you're too smart, too aware, to fall into that trap, I need you to remember this. So did he. On paper, his life was a spectacular success. The house, the family, the career. The 401 key had it all. He was respected by his peers, the kind of guy people would nod at in meetings. His life was a monument to stability, his choices, the epitome of wisdom, his path, a complete, unbroken line. He followed every rule, hit every milestone, avoided every scandal. He was safe. And in the eyes of the system, that meant he was successful. But what no one tells you is that success can be the most beautiful mask for the most devastating kind of failure. Not the failure you list on a resume, or the failure that shows up in a bank account. I'm talking about the failure in the only place that truly matters, inside. Because underneath all that structure, all that stability, all those polished surfaces, he was hollow, he was empty. He couldn't have told you the exact day it started. It wasn't an event, it was a slow, creeping fog. One day, he just woke up and felt off. Not broken. Not in pain, just wrong. He'd sit in his perfect kitchen, the smell of freshly brewed coffee filling the air, and feel nothing. He'd get in his sensible car and drive to his important office, and feel nothing. Something inside him was slipping away. He had everything a man is supposed to want, so why did it feel like he had nothing at all? I read a report from the Survey Center on American Life in 2021 that said 61% of Americans over 45 no longer feel their lives have meaning or purpose. 61%. Just let that number land in your spirit. The majority of men who did everything right can't tell you why they get out of bed in the morning, other than the simple, soul-crushing fact that it's what they did yesterday. He wasn't depressed, not in the way we usually think about it. He wasn't broken or even struggling, not on the outside. He was just fading. Fading slowly, quietly, like a light bulb left on in an empty room for years, gradually dimming until it barely casts a glow, and no one even notices. The psychiatrist, Viktor Frankl, a man who survived the horrors of the Holocaust, had a name for this. He called it the existential vacuum. It's a deep, silent emptiness that comes from a life devoid of purpose, even when all the external markers of success are in place. It's not about failure, it's about a profound absence. The absence of meaning, the absence of a why, the absence of self. He had a chilling realization one day. He couldn't remember the last time he had done anything at all, simply because he wanted to, not because it was what was expected. Every major choice's career, his wife, his home had been made within the safe, comfortable boundaries of what other people would approve of. It hit him then. He hadn't lived a bad life. He just hadn't lived his own life. He didn't regret any one particular moment, but when he looked back at the sum of them all, he had the strange feeling that he hadn't really been there for any of it. He had become a ghost in his own story, haunting the very house he'd worked his whole life to afford. He'd smile in the family photos, but he felt like he was watching a stranger from a great distance. He was always performing, always on, always being the version of himself that was easiest for others to love. He became an absolute expert at being what others needed him to be. but in the process, he completely forgot how to need anything for himself. And then, one day, the question that had been buried for decades finally broke through the surface. It was so simple, yet so terrifying. If I lost my job, what would be left of me? And he didn't mean financially or logistically. He meant in a human sense. If the title was stripped away, if the role dissolved, if the whole structure collapsed, what would remain? Would anyone even know who he really was? And the question that truly shook him, would he even know? Or had he spent so many years being what society wanted that his true, authentic self was buried under a lifetime of layers, lost somewhere in the rubble? That's when it dawned on him, the true nature of his fear. He wasn't afraid of losing his job. He was terrified of realizing there was nothing left underneath it. Because when your entire identity is built around your function, what happens to you when you're no longer useful? It's the question millions of men are too afraid to ask until it's far too late. He had everything the world promised, but none of what his soul craved. He'd been taught how to win the game, but it never occurred to him that the game itself was rigged a lie. And that's the part nobody tells you, my friend. They don't tell you that you can do everything perfectly, follow every rule, and still wake up one day to find that something vital inside you has quietly died. You're not broke, you're not alone, you're not in crisis, but you are empty. It's not some dramatic Hollywood-style breakdown. It's a slow, silent erosion. A crumbling so quiet that you don't even notice it's happening. Until one morning you wake up, and the only thing you feel is a profound blankness, as if the very air has been sucked out of your lungs. And the cruelest twist, you're not even allowed to talk about it. How could you? You're the man who did everything right. You're the one who followed the rules, built the life, checked all the boxes. You're the one everyone else looks up to, the one who has it all together. So how could you ever admit that deep down, you're completely and utterly lost? How could you ever say that even with the perfect family, the beautiful house, the successful career, you have no damn idea what you're doing anymore? Our world just doesn't make space for that kind of vulnerability, especially not if you're a man, and especially not if you're over 40. By then, you're supposed to be a rock, solid, settled, stoic, the strong one. But let me tell you what the numbers say, what the silent screams in the dark confess. According to the CDC, back in 2022, men between the ages of 45 and 64 accounted for more than a quarter of all suicides in the United States. Read that again. Not the troubled teenagers, not the struggling young adults, middle-aged men, the ones who, on the surface, look fine, the ones who smile at the backyard barbecues and pay their bills on time. The ones who never say a word. And why? I think it's because, as men, we're not taught how to hurt out loud. We're taught to fix things, to handle it, to swallow it down, and carry on. So when the weight of that emptiness becomes too heavy to bear, we don't reach out, we just disappear. Not all at once, but piece by piece, over time. We stop laughing from the belly. We stop trying new things. We stop hoping for something more. Until, eventually, we just stop being. And nobody notices because we're still showing up, still making the calls, still sitting at the head of the dinner table, pretending that everything is fine. Our depression doesn't look like tears. It looks like silence. It looks like a man who is physically present in the room, but his soul checked out years ago. And nobody asks the real questions. They ask, how's work? How are the kids? How's that new car? But they don't ask, are you happy? Do you feel alive? When you look in the mirror, do you even recognize the man staring back at you anymore? They don't ask because the world doesn't want real answers. It wants status updates. It wants checklists. So we give them what they want. We smile. We nod. We say, yeah, everything's good, even when it's not, even when we haven't felt truly good in years. And then one morning, without any warning, a thought lands in our chest like an anchor. I don't have time to start over. And it's not about age, my friend. It's about momentum. When you've spent your entire life walking in one direction, the sheer inertia of it all makes the thought of turning around feel impossible. He did everything they told him to do, and in the end, he ran out of time to figure out what he truly wanted. And that, right there, is the real tragedy. It's not that he failed. It's that he succeeded, magnificently, at building a life that was never his. He followed the blueprint to the letter, and now he lives in a house that feels like a stranger's home. He became the man that everyone could depend on, but he could never depend on himself. When he looks in the mirror, he sees a stranger wearing the masks of husband, father, provider. He sees a man who is lost, not because he broke the rules, but because he never found the courage to break free from them. This is the silent crisis, the one nobody wants to talk about. Not because it's rare, but because it's everywhere. And because admitting it exists would mean that all of us would have to question the very definition of a good life that we've been sold. In the end, there was no dramatic climax to his story. No tragedy, no headlines, no final scene. He didn't collapse or scream or beg for more time. He just faded. He faded like a light left on in an empty room, long after everyone else has gone home. He died just as he had lived, quietly, respectably, without causing any disturbance. His obituary was tasteful. His funeral was well attended. Everyone said the right things. A hard-working man, a devoted husband, a reliable, solid, all-around good guy. No one had a bad word to say about him. But then again, no one had much to say at all, because the simple, heartbreaking truth was that no one really knew him, not fully. Not the man hidden beneath all those layers of responsibility. Not the little boy who once wondered about the stars. Not the dreams he never dared to voice, or the fears he never dared to name. He had made it his life's mission to never cause a problem, to never rock the boat, to never make too much noise. And in that, he succeeded. But that kind of silence always has a price. No one hated him, it's true. But no one ever got the chance to miss the real him either. Because the real him never truly showed up. He was present at every birthday party, every ball game, every board meeting, but he was never fully there. He showed up in body, but his soul stayed behind. And the saddest part of all, he thought that was a virtue. He genuinely believed that being invisible was the highest form of love. That sacrificing his voice was the price of being a man. That being needed was more important than being known. So when he was gone, he left behind all the right things: a healthy retirement fund, a paid-off house, a few boxes of old suits and ties, but not much else. There were no journals filled with passionate dreams, no half-finished novels, no wild stories, no lasting, burning questions, just files and folders, just paperwork. Because he followed the script, right down to the very last word, never missing a cue, never changing a line, and never once asking himself if the story he was telling was actually worth living. And now, he's gone. Not in some blaze of glory or disgrace, but in quiet, polite irrelevance. And here's the truth that no one wants to say out loud: that kind of slow, invisible death is 1,000 times more terrifying than failure. Because failure, my friend, at least means you tried. It means you reached for something real, something that was yours. But he didn't fail. He just faded away, and the world barely even noticed he was gone. So, if you're listening to this right now, if you feel the slightest echo of this man's story in your own life, I'm begging you, don't turn away from it. Don't tell yourself, oh, I'm not that far gone, because I promise you, that's exactly what he told himself, year after year, until all the years were gone. But here's the good news: you're still here. That means your story isn't over. Not yet. You still have time to stop performing. You still have time to stop complying. You still have time to stop chasing someone else's definition of what your life should be. You still have time to ask the question he never did: who would I be if I stopped being afraid and just didn't care what they thought? You still have time to write a different ending, an ending that is authentically, unapologetically yours. So, if something inside you feels off, if you feel like something is missing, if you've done everything right and it all still feels wrong, that's not a failure. That's a signal. That's a whisper from the part of you that refuses to die politely. It's a voice that's telling you, you don't have to vanish. You can still live. But first, you have to stop following the path everyone else is on and start remembering who you were before they told you who you were supposed to become. Because the real journey, the one that matters, begins with that first step off the beaten path. And how to take that first step? Well, my friend, that's a whole other story, and perhaps one we can share next time.